Hi guys, welcome to our Little Rescuers Body Bits Hospital. So it's almost Halloween and we are going to have a look at some of our body parts. And today we are going to start with our heart and our lungs. So let's do it. So we have got some lungs. Now these aren't human lungs, these are lungs from a pig, okay? Now I'm going to hold them up so you can see how they sit in your body, okay? So you have one lung on the left and one lung on the right. And underneath our lungs, if I lift them up, we have got our strong, muscly heart, okay? So, what do you guys think that this tube could be? So what I want you to do now is to put your finger on your chin and then just pull your finger down your throat and see if you can feel anything knobbly or anything bumpy, okay? That is your windpipe or your trachea, okay? And when you feel down there, you can feel rings of cartilage. And those rings hold your windpipe open so that when you breathe through your mouth and nose, all of the air goes down your windpipe and into each of your lungs, okay? So I'm going to show you how that works. So I have put a medical tube down the windpipe and I've got a bag here, so we are going to blow some air into that tube and I'm going to show you guys what happens inside of our lung when we breathe, okay? So just imagine that you're taking a really deep breath in and keep an eye on this lung, okay? When we breathe in, all of the air goes down our windpipe into our lungs and our lungs fill up with air, okay? Now that happens in both of our lungs, but today it's only happening in this lung because this one has been cut, okay? And it's to show you that if there's a problem with the lungs, if air can't get down into that lung, then it won't blow up, okay? And it won't inflate. So we've got today one really strong lung that works. But most people, most of the time, have got two lungs that fill up with air that help the oxygen get around our body. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut down the windpipe, down the breathing tube, and we're going to see where it goes, okay? So this cartilage that is inside of our windpipe, keeping it open, it's not a full circle, it's like a C shape, okay? So we're going to cut down the windpipe, cut down the trachea, and we're going to have a little look inside, okay? So if we open it up, we can see that cartilage and we can see how smooth that is, okay? And when I look at my finger, there's some blood on my finger, but also there's a little bit of mucus. And that's really important because we've got mucus inside of our windpipe to stop all the dust and all the tiny little bits that we might breathe in that we don't want in our lungs to stop getting in there, so it gets caught in that mucus and then we can just cough it up, okay? So I'm going to keep cutting down. And now our trachea or our windpipe opens out into two branches. So when we get to the very bottom of our windpipe, it splits into the left and the right bronchus, okay? So it's smaller tubes or smaller windpipes that carry the air further down into the lungs. And then they split again into smaller tubes called the bronchioles, and then they split into really tiny little tubes called the alveoli, and at the end of there, there's really small sacs, only one cell thin, and that's how all of the oxygen gets from our lungs across into our blood, and then our strong heart can pump it around our body. So if you have a look at our lungs, you can see how smooth they are. They're really smooth and they're really full of air, okay? And if I turn them over, again, you can see that they're really, really smooth. And that means we've got a really big surface area so that all the oxygen that's in our lungs can move across into our blood, okay? And our heart is really important in that. Inside of our lungs, we've got 3 lobes or 3 areas in our right lung, and then 2 lobes or 2 areas in our left lung. And why do you think our left lung has got less areas? It's because our heart, that big muscular heart that is about the size of our fist, sits in the middle of our chest but ever so slightly to the left. So it takes the space of that extra lobe or room in the left lung. So our left lung's got 2 areas or 2 lobes, and our right lung has got 3. I'm going to follow this bronchus down into our lung and see what we can see. So I'm going to cut down, and it's still a bit of cartilage around the bronchus. You can hear the cartilage, it's still protected. Okay, and that tube goes all the way down. Oh, you can hear as you cut how spongy that lung sounds. It's really spongy and really full of air. And when you see inside, you can see that after that bronchus is finished, these smaller little bronchioles, those smaller little tubes that carry the air further into the lungs. And then, right on the surface, we've got the alveoli and that really 1-cell thick alveoli sac where the air moves across into our blood. The oxygen that we need moves into our blood. It's called diffusion. It moves from high concentration into a low concentration, okay? So I'm going to keep cutting, but we can't see the alveoli because they're so small. But I'm going to cut a bit of this lung off, and I'm going to prove to you that it is full of air. So we're going to do a little experiment. I'm going to cut off a little bit of the lung, which is full of air, and I'm going to cut off a little bit of the heart, which isn't full of air. That is usually full of blood. I'm going to put them in the water, and I'm going to prove to you how light the lung is, because it should float, okay? So let's try it. Let's cut off a bit of the lung, and then let's go underneath, find our heart, and then let's cut a bit of that heart muscle, okay? That big tissue. Okay, so let's put the heart in first and see what happens. That sinks, okay? Let's try the lung. And the lung floats because it's really light, it's really spongy, and it's full of air, and we need that to get the oxygen into our body. Once the oxygen has passed over into our blood, it travels to our heart. So it enters the left side of our heart by a vein called a pulmonary vein. And then that blood, which is full of oxygen, goes out of the left side of our heart through a big tube called the aorta. It's an artery, and it takes it all around our body and gives all of our body oxygen, okay? And then the blood comes back into the right side of our heart, and now it's got no oxygen left, it's run out of oxygen. It comes into the right side of our heart in a really big vein called the vena cava, and then it travels out of the right side of our heart in something called the pulmonary artery, and it goes back to our lungs, and because we've been breathing, it gets fresh oxygen, and that fresh oxygen is carried back to our heart, and the whole process starts again. It's really, really important that we look after our heart and lungs by keeping healthy, by eating really well, drinking lots of water, moving really well. And our heart and lungs are protected by our bony ribs. Now, a few weeks ago, I did a dissection of the heart, and I'm going to put that link just below so you guys can check the heart out as well. Thank you for watching, and happy Halloween.